across the JAKIB Media Network. Presented by IBEW Local 98. Coverage of the 2021 NFL Draft rolls on with John McMullen, who drops in, and we get some reaction, Johnny Mac. First on the pick, round 2 and round 3 in Cleveland tonight. Let's start there and get your reaction. Then let's get into conversation about the press conference so we can bring everybody up to speed on what Howie and the collaborative team that gathered had to say. But first, your thoughts, first on Landon Dickerson.
Well, really good player, Krause. Probably would have been a first-round pick, but had a lot of medical issues, not only at Alabama, but also Florida State. He started in college at Florida State, tore his ACL, I believe his right ACL in Florida State, tore the left one, or vice versa. He tore each of them in college. Last year in the SEC championship game. So he's coming off those injuries. He has also had tightrope ankle surgery, which is the same surgery Lane Johnson had last season. So he's had a lot of medical issues, but the Eagles obviously aren't concerned with that. He was not medically red flagged. And I got to tell you, if he's healthy, and I think he played 24 or 26 straight games at Alabama before he did get hurt. So there were some positive signs about him getting back on track. And usually with young people, they can come back from ACLs. It's not that big of a concern. So that's the way the Eagles are thinking about it. And if it works, it's going to work out really well because this guy's a really good player. He's going to be the heir apparent to either Jason Kelce or Brandon Brooks. And it's something I talked about in the first round. The Eagles need that. And they were able to get it at 37. But I will say, Krause, Howie Roseman had a great 22 hours. And now he's taking the hits again. And here's the reason. Well, there's two reasons, and we'll get to the big reason that people should be a little bit upset. But why they were upset, skill position player on day 1, lineman on day 2. People don't like linemen, but you need them.
Well, you need the big uglies, John, on both sides of the football. Question on Dickerson, though. Was it necessary to take him there? We talked last night. You've talked many times leading up to the draft on Birds 365 about the needs of this football team. And I assume, and I don't know whether this is right or not. And I proudly profess to not be the smartest guy in the room, but I certainly do assume that you're supposed to go into the draft and address needs. And are you saying Landon Dickerson represents a need? And was it a need at 37?
Well, I mean, it's not an immediate need, but it is a need probably by 2022. In a lot of ways, the Eagles are building toward 2022 because of all the salary cap issues of moving on from Carson Wentz that we've talked about time and time again. I mean, there's a certain ceiling for this team in 2021. So, yeah, the draft is about more than just one season. And look, whether it happens in 2022 or 2023, I would say over the next 2 seasons, either Jason Kelce or Brandon Brooks isn't going to be here. Jason might retire. The Eagles might move on from Brandon Brooks. And bang, you got a really high-level player who can just slot in and play either of those positions. So what doesn't look like a need today on April 30th will be a big need very, very soon. So you sort of have to start looking ahead, and that's what I think the Eagles were doing.
Go ahead and say it, John. I give you permission to say it. Welcome to the process. Philadelphia Eagles style.
I don't think they're not going to lose Krause 3 years in a row on purpose. I don't even think they're trying to lose this season on purpose. I think they're trying to be realistic and say, we don't have the wherewithal. Look, we had Andrew Brandt on Birds 365. I thought he explained it brilliantly. He said, if you're in these fantasy football leagues that give you a certain amount of money, a salary cap, and say, you have $200 to get players, and all of a sudden one guy gets $165, well, he's up against it. That's what the Eagles are up against, because they're paying Carson Wentz $34 million to play for the Indianapolis Colts. Next year, that's all cleared up. Next year, you can be players in free agency. Next year, if Jalen Hurts doesn't work out, you can be players in the quarterback market. You can do anything you want to do. And that's why they've accumulated the 3 first-round picks. They'll have money. So, yeah, if you want to call it a 2-year process, but the Eagles are going to try to win games this year. They're going to try to win games. And if that offensive line is healthy, they're going to win more games than people think they are.
Let me get you to talk about Milton Williams, the defensive tackle / defensive end out of Louisiana Tech. I'm not sure which way to frame that up, but the Eagles pick him up in round 3. Now, they were slotted before when the draft started to select at number 70, 70th. And then actually ended up in a trade where they picked Milton Williams at 73. Give me your initial thoughts on Milton Williams. If you look at the board and you listen to some of the other experts, the pick is not receiving very good marks.
Well, 2 things. I think that was the story of the night, but it had nothing to do with Milton Williams. I don't know how closely you guys were following along the TV broadcast, but they were in the Eagles draft room, and Howie Roseman was giving everybody the fist pounds after the pick. Got Tom Donahoe, who's the senior personnel advisor that's been around this league for a really long time. And it certainly looked like Tom was upset. And Howie kind of explained at the press conference, they went down 3 spots to get an extra 6th-round pick. It seems like Tom Donahoe wanted somebody that was taken between 70 and 73. And it certainly looked like, and I'm not a lip reader, but everybody else seems to be a lip reader. He seems to have said, we needed or we wanted the cornerback, which would have been Aaron Robinson from Central Florida. So you have this angst on live television, and we know all the issues there have been with the Eagles front office, and you just saw it live with Tom Donahoe. Tom Donahoe looking angry at Howie Roseman for not sticking to the board. That, to me, is the biggest story of the night. Nothing to do. Milton Williams is a good player. People don't know him because he's from Louisiana Tech. Solid kid, really athletic, tested tremendously. I think Dane Brugler is one of the best draft people in the country, had him rated as the 4th best defensive tackle. But certainly seems to me they didn't stick to their board again. And that's been a problem.
You know, eavesdropping in, John, on the press conference tonight, and I think it was Rob Mady who asked the question of Howie Roseman enjoying the glow of round 1 and, you know, the sour milk of round 2 and 3 from a fan perspective. And I think Howie used an analogy and kind of went out of his way to say, hey, I don't even know. I'm not even aware of what's happening, outside the building. Not sure I buy into that. Not sure it really matters, but I'd love to know what you think about it.
He hears certain things, no question about it. I do think, over these 2 days, he's so busy, he probably doesn't know. I mean, I'm busy. He's more busy than I'm busy. So we don't even look up for these 3 days, basically. But he's well aware. I mean, if you saw All or Nothing on Amazon, the season that they covered the Philadelphia Eagles, I always joke, Howie was in that. He showed off his tinted windows, how dark they are. They're dark for a reason. He drives around and people are cursing at him. People are saying horrible things about him. Like I said, he had 22 hours because he picked a skill position player. Today, he got back to what he believes in, and that's building up front on both sides of the football. And that's not popular, Krause. It's not popular. It's never going to be popular. But the old adage is if you listen to the fans, you'll be sitting next to the fans. Skill position people can't do their jobs unless the offensive line is blocking. Cornerbacks can't do their jobs unless the pass rush gets home. I've been saying it, and people don't like when I say it. So you can imagine the angst that Howie gets when he says, these guys are important. These guys are important, but there are no fantasy football numbers for offensive linemen. So nobody cares about offensive linemen. They only care when they're getting the quarterback killed, like they were last season.
On Draft Takes with Derek Gunn, Tim McManus and Barrett Brooks joined Gunner for immediate reaction after round 2, and then an immediate reaction after round 3. Again, not to be repetitive. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, and I don't profess to be an expert evaluator of talent. But I certainly give Barrett Brooks credibility to be able to make an assessment on whether or not Milton Williams was the right pick. Johnny hates it.
Well, I think a lot of people hate it because a lot of people wanted corner. I think Tom Donahoe hated it because he wanted a cornerback. And I mentioned Aaron Robinson right after the Williams pick. I think it was Benjamin St-Juste went off the board, and then Paulson Adebo within 3 picks. So the Eagles had a lot of corners, and they have a need at corner. So I get why people don't like it, but I do think they're being a little bit unfair to Milton Williams. I mean, Barrett's a little bit different, but not a lot of people get to see Louisiana Tech play. So you have to give him a chance. Like I said, he's a tremendous athlete. He's got a lot of versatility. I think he'll be a good rotational player early in his career behind Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave, and hopefully in 2 or 3 years he can develop into a starter. I think that's how the Eagles are looking at it. But yeah, you can make the argument. If you're going to make the argument, they needed a corner, they don't have a corner, but Howie said today, it's April 30th. They're not playing today. There's still ways to get a corner. They can go out on the free agent market after the draft is over. There's still people out there like Steven Nelson.
They have money, John. They have money to spend.
They don't have a ton of money, but these are not expensive players. You could restructure. They have a couple restructures left with Brandon Graham, Lane Johnson. You can always find a way to get a little bit of money to sign. Remember, go back to the Super Bowl season, Krause. LeGarrette Blount was signed after the draft. Those are the kind of players you're talking about. 1-year players that can fit in nicely for short term. So there are other avenues you can go down. But if you're just going to focus on Eagles needed a cornerback, they didn't take a cornerback, yeah, you're probably going to be upset. And, I always go back to Brian Billick. Brian Billick was the first one to tell me, he's not the first one. This has been around the NFL for years, but he was the first one to tell me, and it always stuck with me since that day, Krause. Need is the worst talent evaluator in sports. In other words, if you reach for a need and ignore a good player, you're probably making a mistake.
Somewhere in the middle must be the truth of that statement, because, and again, I don't want to be disrespectful to Milton Williams, and I think Landon Dickerson would be a great player, or could be a great player, is a great player, just comes with the Achilles heel of the injury. And, oh, by the way, comes to a franchise that seems to be plagued with injuries.
Yeah,
on the offensive line.
That's legitimate, a criticism, because this team has had so many issues with injuries. If you want to say they shouldn't have taken a guy with that injury history, I think that's valid. But you can only listen to your medical staff. I mean, if they clear the kid, they clear the kid. And then you say to yourself, well, I'm not an expert as Howie Roseman. I'm not an expert as Andy Weidel about medical issues. So they have to listen to Ars Denota, who was the Eagles' chief medical officer, and he cleared the kid. So to me, Dickerson is not even a question. I mean, that's a good player. That's a good player. If he stays healthy, people are going to love that pick.
They're going to love him too. He's got that Philadelphia swag. He's got, he's gritty. I like the guy. I just don't know if he was the right guy at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. To me, it's tremendous value though, because if he doesn't have those injuries, he's probably 22, 23, 24 in the first round. So you're not getting him. So it kind of, how do you look at it? He slipped a little bit because of the injury history. And if it works out for you, it turns into tremendous value. Now,
a lot of risk, though, John.
Same thing happened a couple of years ago with Sidney Jones.
Right.
Sidney Jones was going to be a top 15 pick, and he tore his Achilles at his pro day, and he fell down to the second round, and the Eagles took a flyer. It didn't work out. So, but, if it does work out, Dallas Cowboys did the same thing with Jalen Smith, who was going to be a top 5 pick, had a horrific injury in his final college game. They took a flyer. They waited a year. He turned into a really good player. So, yeah, but no question, there's risk.
2 last thoughts, John. Tomorrow represents the end of the 2021 draft, and Howie and the collaborative team have a good number of picks, including now, I think, four in that 6th round. So what does it mean for tomorrow?
I don't think much. I mean, what it means is you have more lottery tickets, and I guess it gives you a better opportunity to hit on somebody in the 6th or the 7th round. But Krause, this is not the deepest draft. In fact, it's a very weak draft when it comes to depth, just because of the pandemic. So many players didn't come out because of the new college rules. They gave the kids an extra year because of the pandemic. So the pool usually starts at about 1,300 players. This year it started in the 700s. So, I mean, there's just less talent. So that's where I look at the trade back. It's only 3 spots, but you say, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you going back 3 spots in this draft to pick up an extra 6th-round pick? You're probably going to flip that tomorrow to either come back up, or you're going to flip it for picks next year, because this draft is lacking in depth, as I said. So what are you doing? If you want to criticize Howie Roseman, I would criticize him over stuff like that. He's trying to be the smartest guy in the room. He's trying to do a little bit of everything. And obviously Tom Donahoe, who has been around this league a very long time, he got pissed off by it.
You know, Tim McManus mentioned to Derek Gunn, they were in conversation about Zach Ertz. What do you hear? At what point is the inevitable going to become reality, where Zach Ertz is going to be packaged up and or traded? What do you know?
I know he doesn't want to be here. I know he's working behind the scenes. You know, Zach is the Eagles player representative for the union. And I know we had Les Bowen on, who was in Cleveland for day one of the draft on Birds 365. And Les got a hold of Zach for that union question. Like, are the guys coming in for voluntary work? And Zach had no idea. Zach is essentially checked out of the Philadelphia Eagles. He doesn't want to be here. The Eagles were hopeful to get value for him, but coming off the bad year, coming off the injuries, his age, his contract, they're either going to have to trade him and take very little in return. Maybe you attach him to a 6th-round pick and to get up into the 5th round tomorrow, something of that nature. Or if the draft comes and goes and we're done, they're going to have to release him. He's not playing here. That I can guarantee.
Across the JAKIB Media Network, all presented by IBEW Local 98, coverage of the 2021 NFL Draft rolls into Saturday. We'll be back tomorrow with draft takes with Derek Gunn and Barrett Brooks. Johnny Mack will be with us tomorrow. We'll be live throughout the draft. We'll be completing, Johnny Mack, our 3rd day of 15-plus hours of live coverage. Fascinating conversation today, by the way, on the National Football Show. Joe Theismann joined Dan Sileo. Fascinating conversation. Definitely worth a listen to across the JAKIB Media YouTube channel as we continue to provide draft coverage. I thought Merrill Reese gave some good, it was short and sweet, but I thought he gave some good perspective on Birds 365 today about the number 1 pick.
Yeah, I mean, Merrill's excited. I mean, Merrill has been through this team. Obviously, he has seen the last 2 seasons. It's really difficult, Krause, to go through a modern NFL season with a receiver that doesn't have 600 yards. In other words, no Eagles receiver had 600 for 2 consecutive seasons. In this environment, where you have teams that have 2 over 1,000 and another who might be at 800 at times, they're so explosive. It's so easy to throw the football. One thing I can tell you is DeVonta Smith is a heck of a lot better than anybody the Eagles have had at the wide receiver position for a long time. My only question with him is 166 pounds. That concerns me.
John McMullen, great work, my friend. Get some rest. We'll see you tomorrow.
No rest for the weary. Yes. I'll rest when I die, Krause.
I love it. Great stuff from John McMullen. Stay with us. We'll end this segment here live on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. I'm still going to work. Fan reaction with Philly's biggest fan coming up in 5. Johnny, we'll see you tomorrow, brother.
Thanks, Krause.